What's up, everybody? I hope you're doing well. Well, this week I thought I would mix it up a little bit, and rather than sharing my own personal advice for private practice, I'm synthesizing your top tips for starting a private practice. That's right, last week I put out a poll on Instagram inviting you all to share what you wish you knew before you started private practice, and in this video I'm synthesizing all of your feedback from that poll into 7 top tips for starting a private practice. Welcome to Private Practice Skills. I'm Dr. Marie Fang, psychologist in private practice. I post videos offering tools I learned the hard way about starting and growing private practice so that you don't have to. I'm so excited for today's video, not only because we're having summer weather in February, whoop whoop, but because I get to share all of your advice. So thank you to you all for responding on Instagram, because even though there are some tips that really line up with things that I like to repeat over and over on this channel, there are some things that you all shared as your top tips for starting a private practice that I don't often emphasize on this channel. So I'm excited to share with you the 7 top tips that you all have shared that you wish you knew when you were starting a private practice. So without further ado, let's hop into your top tips for starting a private practice. Now, I've synthesized all of your tips into categories, and the first category of tip that you all wish you had when you started was encouragement. Just that sense that, like, hey, you can do this. It's gonna be okay. Let me read some of the tips that you all have shared. V.I. Powell says, you can do this, trust yourself, and ask questions. Let's Talk Psychotherapy says, be kind and patient. Smiley face, because sometimes we need that little extra emoji. I understand. Sensitive Social Worker says, setting up effective systems will take you longer than you think. Be patient with yourself. Oh, I'm hearing that word patient again. Yes, practicing patience is so helpful when you're starting a private practice. And Viri Rod says, you don't need to have it all figured out yet. Just start it. Yes. That's great advice for literally just about everything in life. If you're starting something new, you don't have to have it all figured out yet, just start. Now, the next top tip that you all shared is to get support. Yes, 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 starting a private practice is not something to do in isolation. Being a therapist is not something to do in isolation. And honestly, being a human is not something to do in isolation. So you all shared your tips for how to make sure you are well supported so that, you can navigate the treacherous land of starting a private practice without feeling alone. Stace Invader says, have tons and tons of support. Hire attorneys, join consult groups, go to your own therapy. Yes, yes, yes. Genius Mango says, hire a supervisor, which, that's a good tip. I personally haven't necessarily hired a supervisor before, but I think if you're having trouble accessing good consultation groups, then absolutely that's a resource for you as well. The third category of tip that you all shared is to build a practice that you love from the beginning. There were several tips that I read from you all that I would kind of put in the category of start off on the foot that you want to end on rather than waiting to build up to something that you want to get to later. So let me name some examples from the tips you all shared. Illuminate Therapy NYC says, wait for the right clients. Don't just take anyone because you feel pressure, internal or external. Yes. I made that mistake at the beginning where I just took every single client that ever knocked on my door that came from anywhere because I felt like beggars can't be choosers and I'm building my practice. And now in retrospect, I wish that I honed in on the types of clients that I love working with straight from the get-go. So good tip. And along these same lines, Sazinator says, start at my goal rate delivering goal services. Don't undercut myself. Yes, don't undercharge. Offer the kinds of services that you want and charge the rate that you want from the beginning. The rest will build from there. And Proctor 10869 says, you don't have to be with insurance, you can market well. Yes. Now, this isn't to say that you shouldn't be with insurance, but that's a decision for you to think through from the get-go, and it's not necessarily true that you have to start on an insurance panel in order to build your practice, even if ultimately you don't want to be on insurance panels. If you want to be on insurance panels in the end, absolutely start off on insurance panels, but it's not a good starting point to think you're going to start with insurance and then wean off. Yeah, I have some videos going over that, so I'll link to those below if you're interested in learning more about insurance versus not insurance. The next category of tip that you all shared is around healthy boundaries, creating that sense of work-life balance, learning how to log off from work stuff at the end of the day so you can attend to whatever your personal stuff is. So some examples of that tip are from Dan Fitz 1895 says, get a second phone or separate number for clients. Absolutely, there's many reasons why this is a good idea, but one great reason is to make sure you have that clear separation so that you're not hopping onto your phone when it's not work time. Cassandra Lee says, make a no-show policy off the bat and stick to it. Yes, I'm all about that no-show policy. I have a whole video going over how to make a no-show policy, so I'll link to that below if that's something you're interested in. And Kajord 14 says, set and stick to strict boundaries with clients, and it's up to you to enforce them. Yes, whatever boundaries there are that you want to set in your practice, that is part of the value of having your own practice. So feel free to make boundaries. Maybe it's I don't answer the phone after 7 p.m. or I'm not available on weekends, or maybe it's, I'm ending my session on time. If that's a boundary that you need to learn to set. Whatever it might be, set your boundaries, stick to them, and yes, it is up to you to enforce them because there's no one else around making sure that you're holding to your own boundaries. Now, the next category of tip is something that I don't spend as much time emphasizing on this channel, but I would say most of you who offered your top tips offered them in this category, and that is the category of finances, bookkeeping, and taxes. Whoo! And that is such an important category, so let's name some examples of tips that you all shared in this category. Kenzie Heindel says, how much taxes would be for self-employment? Yeah, sometimes it's hard to know how much taxes you're going to owe until you get there, and then you go, oh shoot, I owe a bunch of taxes. More tips on this in a second. Joanne Kim Chan says, pay quarterly taxes. Yes, yes, yes. If you don't pay those quarterly taxes, then you might be finding yourself paying kind of a penalty later, and depending on your financial situation, sometimes the penalty can be kind of high. So pay them quarterly and you'll save your bottom later on. Heal for Real Therapy says, get an accountant ASAP. Yes, get whatever kind of financial support you need right from the beginning so that you're not left kind of cleaning up messes later on. Great tip. Maria Dreyer says, not to dig a hole in your pockets for rent, start out small, or even an outside home office will do. Yes, I talk about this often. If there's any way that you can start your practice small with minimal financial overhead expenses, then you're going to set yourself up for success because it's a lot more sustainable to have a nice runway into whenever your practice starts to fill up rather than, renting a super expensive full-time office straight off the bat, and maybe you don't have enough clients to really sustain that. Now, if you're not sure where to start when it comes to finances, bookkeeping, taxes, when to file taxes, how much taxes to file, what entity you should file as, and beyond. If you're feeling overwhelmed by all of that, let me recommend Herd Bookkeeping and Tax, which is like having your own specialized accountant for a therapist in your back pocket, and they kind of hold your hand through the whole process of all aspects of your finances and taxes in private practice. So if you're interested in checking out Herd, I have a link below where you can learn more and see if that's something that might help address all of those concerns that you have. And the next category of tip is all about insurance and just making sure you're prepared, you know what you're doing around billing insurance. Brianne Cummings says, start credentialing with insurances months prior to intended start date in private practice. Such a long process. Typically, at best, it's going to take a couple of months at least for insurance credentialing to go through, meaning if you're applying to be on an insurance panel so that you can bill that insurance for clients who are in network with that insurance coverage. But sometimes it could take upwards of even 6 months. So if you're wanting to be on insurance panels and you know that you're going to be starting private practice in the future, the sooner you're able to apply to bill to that insurance, the better, so that you are ready to take clients on that insurance panel as soon as you open your doors. And Spanglish Therapy says, how to bill insurances. So yeah, once you're on those insurance panels, there's a whole process for how you do insurance billing, and you really want to know how to do that billing before you've met with your first client who's in network with an insurance policy. And the last category of tips are around website and having an effective website that brings clients to your practice. Yes, I'm all about those websites. Ashley D says, how to have a good looking website and language or writing out the about me. Oh yes, Ashley D, you touched on some of the tougher parts of the website process, and Mrs. Mosh touches on the last piece, which is what SEO was. Yes, I'm so glad you all brought up this tip. And actually I have a course all about how to build a website that fills your practice, which answers all of these questions. So if you don't have a website yet and you don't know where to start, you'd like to DIY your website with me, then feel free to check out the course that I offer on that topic, linked below. And there were plenty of other miscellaneous tips beyond these that I wasn't able to include in this video, but these were the categories that I saw pop up over and over again in your responses. So if you're thinking about starting a private practice or you're just starting out, I hope these tips were helpful to you. And before we close, I'd like to thank TherapyNotes.com for sponsoring this video. TherapyNotes covers all of your practice management needs, from scheduling to notes to billing. They have a HIPAA-secure telehealth platform. You can charge your client's card like we talked about before. You can just have all of your practice management needs covered in one place. If you're interested in checking out TherapyNotes, you can get 2 months to try it for free with no commitment just by clicking the link in the description of this video. Well, I hope you found this video helpful, and leave a comment below if there are any tips you would add that I didn't cover in this video for how to start a private practice so that other folks can benefit from your knowledge. And until next time, from one therapist to another, I wish you well.